Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition of the Hindu, I have chosen 5 important articles for a detailed discussion. We have 3 articles relevant for both prelims and mains, and 2 small articles that are important for the prelims exam. So stay with me for the next 1 hour and I promise to cover all these topics comprehensively so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are liking our initiatives and benefiting from them, do let us know through your likes, your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Before we start, I have a very important announcement. Mains 2024 exam has started from yesterday and we will be providing a detailed analysis of the mains question paper. Yesterday, after the essay paper was completed, we conducted a live session at 2 p.m. discussing and analyzing the essay questions. So today we will continue to do the same. As today UPSC will be conducting the mains exam for GS paper 1 and GS paper 2. So at 2 p.m. we are going to discuss and analyze the GS paper 1. And again at 7 p.m. we'll go live on our YouTube channel to discuss and analyze GS paper 2. So do join us live to attend these sessions, especially for 2025 aspirants. These sessions can be very useful as you can understand the question paper pattern, the trend, and also understand answer writing, as we are going to discuss the answer writing approach and model answers as well. So do join us live at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. With this, let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu by looking at the first article from the front page. On page number 1, we have a very important article related to Indian polity and as well as internal security. Yesterday, the Bombay High Court has struck down the amendment that was done to IT rules last year, which had established a fact-check unit to tackle the menace of fake news. See, last year in 2023, the Government of India had amended the IT rules. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, which is the nodal ministry, had amended the IT rules, providing for the establishment of a fact-check unit to check for fake news related to the government, the business of the government. And this amendment which was done was challenged on constitutional grounds. And the Bombay High Court has struck down the amendment as unconstitutional. The Bombay High Court has held that this amendment, which provided for the establishment of a fact-check unit, would be a violation of Article 14, right to equality, and Article 19, that provides for freedom of speech and expression, and also freedom of profession. So let's examine this topic in great detail. It's a very, very important topic, both for polity and internal security. So first, let's begin with the basics. Let's understand what is fake news, what is the menace of fake news. What can the government do to counter the menace of fake news? We will also look at the IT rules that were introduced in a new avatar from 2021 and how it has been repeatedly amended to provide the government a legal tool to hold the intermediaries accountable for the misinformation and fake news that could be spreading, especially on internet and digital social media platforms. So let's discuss all this in detail and then we'll come to this particular case. We'll understand the fact-check unit that the government was proposing to set up and why the Bombay High Court has struck down this amendment as unconstitutional. See, fake news has been a menace to society from centuries. Ever since humans learned how to communicate, there are some who will lie. There are some who will misrepresent the information or misrepresent the facts. So the spread of such misinformation could be harmful to the society. See, in some cases, it may not be causing any harm to the society, but when there is a deliberate intent to cause harm, misinformation and fake news can be deadly to the society. This can be used to instigate hatred in the society, to create divisions between communities, to instigate rebellions against the authority. So fake news has been a menace to society since time immemorial. But with advancement in technology and new forms of media coming up, it has become easier to spread fake news. For example, when writing developed and when we started printing technology, right, when we could print newspapers, magazines, books, pamphlets, it became all the more easier to communicate and spread information, which also meant that wrong information, completely incorrect information, misrepresented information would also start spreading. Then after print, radio and television played an important role in the spread of fake news and misinformation. But the new age media which has evolved in the last 4 decades, that is computer based communication, digital communication, primarily based on the internet, which has evolved, led by social media firms and digital media and other forms of new age media, new age communication. These technologies have been transformative to the spread of news and information. Today, at the click of a button, almost every single individual on the planet can access news and information. So this reach of new age media, the global reach, the instantaneous reach of information is what makes these technologies prone to misuse, because any technology can be misused for the wrong purpose. Of course, digital communication, internet and social media platforms, they have been revolutionary. They have transformed the global economy. They have democratized information and they have truly empowered every individual. They drive economic activities around the world. There are many advantages as well. But however, such transformative revolutionary technologies, if it is in the wrong hands, it can be easily misused for the wrong purposes. So given the scale of internet based communication and the reach of social media, it has become all the more convenient for miscreants and vested interests to spread wrongful information which is entirely fake, or to spread partial truths and conduct misinformation, disinformation campaigns as part of a propaganda. So this has become a huge menace to the society. It has become a menace to democracy and a civilized world order. Because today, by spreading fake news and misinformation through social media, through internet, it is possible to manipulate elections. It is possible to carry out social engineering, where you can alter the minds of the individuals on a mass scale. You can push people to change their views and opinions and choices. It has become possible to interfere with democratic elections, to instigate hatred and widen the social divisions. You can promote ethnic divisions, communal polarization. This could lead to riots between communities, leading to destabilization and breakdown of law and order. The spread of fake news and misinformation has been directly connected with several conflicts and civil wars as well. So, given the menace of fake news and misinformation, it has become all the more important to tackle the threat, to regulate the flow of information, and especially to regulate social media platforms and internet-based digital communication platforms. So, there are many incidents, many examples that we can think of that highlight the risk posed by fake news and misinformation. For example, there have been allegations of interference in American presidential elections, where American voters were misled. Their voting choices were altered through a well-planned social engineering campaign using fake news and propaganda and misinformation. The blame was put on Russian intelligence agencies for interfering with American presidential elections. In India, we have seen many incidents where fake news and misinformation has led to social unrest. It has led to widening of the divisions on communal lines, and it has even created unrest in the society and led to the breakdown of law and order. So, Government of India is very focused to tackle the menace of fake news. Now, if you look at the approach to tackle fake news, the social media firms, they themselves have taken up self-regulation. You might have noticed that on all major social media platforms like Meta, Instagram, WhatsApp, YouTube, Twitter or X, on every social media platform, there are number of checks and balances and technological interventions that are built into the platform to prevent or at least to report fake news and misinformation, right? I'm sure you would have noticed that there is an option where you can go report every post so that the algorithm can automatically review the content. Or there are fact check teams employed by these companies to conduct a physical manual review of the content hosted on their platforms. So if any content violates their community guidelines, those companies will act against it and they'll take down such content. Right? So self-regulation has become a norm within the industry. The civil society and media also plays a role in this regard. There are several fact-check organizations today, from individuals, freelancers, volunteers to media-led organizations, responsible and reputed media outlets like Hindu, Indian Express, New York Times, Washington Post. They've all formed their own alliances to check facts, to check fake news, to counter the menace. There are many civil society activists playing a role as well. So apart from that, there is a need for the government to regulate fake news and these social media and digital platforms as well. Given the threat to social order and stability and security of the nation, it does become important to regulate these platforms, especially to tackle fake news. So Government of India in 2021 introduced the new IT rules under the IT Act of 2000. See, Information Technology Act of 2000 is the primary law that we have in the country that regulates all electronic commerce and digital transactions in the country. It is enforced by the Ministry of Electronics and IT, or METI. So this would be the nodal ministry. So back in 2011, a set of IT rules had been notified to regulate IT firms and all forms of internet-based, computer-based technologies. But given the evolution in technology and the new platforms that had come up, the older IT rules were replaced with a new set of IT rules in 2021, known as the Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code. So these new IT rules, they were meant to regulate social media firms, be it X, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, right? All these platforms would come under the regulation of the government through the new IT rules. Then OTT platforms, your streaming services from Netflix to Amazon Prime to Hotstar and many others, they were brought under regulation of IT rules as well. And even digital media, that is media outlets which only have a digital presence. They don't have a physical print. They don't print newspapers or magazines, but you do have media outlets which are purely digital, like Scroll, The Wire, Swarajya. There are many examples today. So even they were outside of the purview of regulation. So these internet-based platforms, social media firms, OTT platforms and digital media, they were first brought under the regulation of the new IT rules. These IT rules have been repeatedly amended. Even online gaming has been brought under regulation under the same rules through a recent amendment. And last year, another amendment was done to establish a fact-check unit to tackle the menace of fake news specific to business of government. If someone is spreading wrong information about the government or related to the business of the government, to tackle this, the government proposed to set up a fact-check unit by amending the IT rules. Now, this is where the controversy comes up. In fact, in 2021, when the new IT rules were introduced to regulate social media, OTT platforms and digital media, then itself a big controversy had come up. A lot of petitions had been filed challenging the constitutional validity of these new IT rules. So let's take a quick look as to how the government planned to regulate these platforms. If you look at social media regulation, the new IT rules stated that there would be two categories of social media firms. We will have social media intermediaries and we will have major social media intermediaries. So social media intermediaries refers to those social media companies which have a very small subscriber base. They hardly have few thousand, maybe few lakh subscribers, not more than that. Meaning their reach, their impact is limited. Also their scale of operation, their revenue is limited. So very few restrictions were placed on them. They were largely allowed to self-regulate, and mandatory compliances were not placed on them because they are very small firms, very small companies. But if the government flags any inappropriate content, right, content which promotes graphic violence, content which promotes abuse of women, rape videos, for example, which often circulate on internet and social media, content which could threaten national security. So such content, if it is flagged by the government, then those companies will have to take down the content. For major social media intermediaries, which have millions of subscribers, which have a massive reach, which are essentially global companies like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, etc. For these major social media intermediaries, more strict regulations were brought in. For example, these companies will have to appoint certain officials in India. They can't claim that they are a completely virtual entity operating in a foreign jurisdiction. Because one problem we always faced with foreign social media companies was that we couldn't get them to cooperate. Even when genuine cases came up, where fake news was leading to security problems, where crimes were being committed on social media or through social media, these companies were not cooperating with our law enforcement agencies. They wouldn't share the information on the grounds of data privacy. And since we wouldn't have jurisdiction on foreign shores, it became a legal nightmare and an investigation nightmare for Indian agencies. So to bring these companies under Indian law, to bring them under Indian jurisdiction, it was mandated that these companies mandatorily should have an Indian presence, meaning they should have a registered office in India. There should be certain officials appointed. There should be a chief compliance officer who will report the compliance to the government regularly as to how the company is complying with the new guidelines. There should be a grievance redressal officer who can receive complaints from the users. Users can flag any objectionable content, and the company should review the content, and if it violates the guidelines, it should be taken down. And if there is any serious violation, and if the government flags the content, orders the company to take it down, they have to oblige mandatorily within the given deadline, within 72 hours, right? Those companies will have to take action and take down such content. The companies will have to cooperate with law enforcement as well when genuine cases come up to share information about those users, share their account details, their location details, which can help the investigating agencies. So all such provisions were made mandatory. This is how social media firms were brought under regulation of the IT rules. For OTT platforms, self-regulation was promoted. For OTT platforms, a three-tiered regulation structure was created, where at the first level, self-regulation was promoted by the respective companies, where they will self-regulate, where they will basically implement few basic norms, placing advisories, parental guidance, ensuring that minors are not exposed to adult content, right? Or having a provision where the viewers can report objectionable content. So such self-regulation was provided with a review by the industry level organizations and final review by the government as well. The I&B ministry would play a role in regulating OTT platforms. Similarly, for digital media, self-regulation was provided, where the concerned media outlets will self-regulate the content, plus they will receive complaints from the public, from the readers. They will have an industry level association as well to look into the complaints and grievances, and if necessary, government can also step in and issue directives to take down any fake news and objectionable content. Now, some of you might think these provisions are good. If government is regulating these platforms, it is good to tackle fake news and misinformation. But think about the other side of the argument. If government itself is giving these powers to itself, now tomorrow if someone writes an article criticizing the government, or let's say you post a social media post or a video criticizing the government, condemning a government policy, which is your democratic right. Now tomorrow if government flags that as objectionable, determines that it is a threat to law and order and security, and orders the company to take it down, the companies are obliged to take it down. So don't you think that cripples your right to free speech and expression, your right to voice your concern, raise your dissent, oppose the government. This is a guaranteed fundamental right. In fact, the right to dissent, the right to free speech and expression is the hallmark of a free democracy. Now, apart from this, in 2019, the Modi government established a fact-check unit within the Press Information Bureau. The PIB is like the PR arm of the government, right? I'm sure all of you are referring to PIB website, going through all the press releases from various ministries for your current affairs updates. Within the same PIB, a fact-check unit was established to tackle fake news pertaining to Government of India. So, on social media and internet platforms, if any wrong information was being circulated related to the business of the government, related to the activities of the government, such content could be flagged by this unit of PIB and it could order the companies to take down the content. Again, many of you might think this is a good initiative, right? Government should be tackling fake news. But again, think about it. PIB is part of the government. If government decides what is fake, what is correct or what is the truth, then tomorrow what if the fact check unit tells the companies to take down articles which are critical of the government, articles which oppose the government. Now, criticizing the government, criticizing government leaders, even the Prime Minister, opposing the government in power is your birthright. It is a democratic right, a fundamentally guaranteed right. So, if the government itself becomes the judge and the prosecutor of what is correct, incorrect, what is the truth, what is false, then this could be easily misused. It could be easily misused to stifle dissent, to curb opposition, to take away your freedom of speech and expression. So, when this fact check unit was set up within PIB through a government notification, it triggered a huge controversy in the country. But PIB said that we will only take complaints regarding news pertaining to Government of India. We will rigorously check through multiple layers of cross-checking to ensure only fake news is flagged and taken down. But problem is, it allows users, the citizens, to report, and those complaints are taken up by the PIB. Now, tomorrow what if a member of the ruling party raises a complaint saying that there is an article which is unnecessarily critical of the government, which is a threat to the society? If that complaint is looked into by PIB and if PIB decides that the article should be taken down, wouldn't that constitute a conflict of interest? Right? Wouldn't this allow a few parties which have more following and a more dominant presence to control the flow of information and target dissent and opposition? These concerns came up. So, to address this, the government amended the IT rules again last year in 2023, and the Ministry of Electronics and IT proposed the establishment of a dedicated fact check unit which would have a legal status under the IT rules. Apart from the existing fact check unit which is within the PIB, the central government proposed that we will set up another fact check unit, and for that purpose IT rules were amended last year, and this is where the current case begins. Several civil society activists and concerned citizens, they approached the court. They filed petitions at Supreme Court and Bombay High Court challenging the constitutional validity of this amendment. In fact, the Supreme Court of India, which took up the case earlier this year, it has stayed this notification. In March this year, the Supreme Court has issued a stay order on the establishment of a fact check unit as proposed under the amended IT rules of 2023. Because the Supreme Court acknowledged that there are certain problems with these provisions. See, a few years ago, there was one controversial provision within the IT Act. It's called Section 66A of IT Act. It was a notorious provision. This provision of IT Act allowed the law enforcement and security agencies to take down any content which was deemed to be offensive. It mainly dealt with offensive content. Offensive content could be taken down, and the person who circulated the offensive content could be arrested and prosecuted. It was seen as a criminal offense. Now, the problem was the section never clearly defined what is offensive, because saying that something is offensive is very subjective. For example, what you find to be offensive may not be offensive to me, right? So the law never defined what is offensive. It gave discretion to the authorities, to the police and the law enforcement to determine whether some content is offensive or not. And whenever such discretion is given, it often tends to be misused, usually on political grounds. So people who are posting jokes and cartoons and satire about political leaders, they started getting arrested. For example, there were college-going kids who would post something on their Facebook wall or circulate a message or a joke on WhatsApp, and someone would file a complaint and they would get arrested because of circulating these posts, which are completely harmless. Many old people, right, who were circulating WhatsApp messages and jokes and cartoons about political leaders, they got arrested under the law. They had to face prosecution just because they had forwarded a message. This was blatant misuse of the law. So this matter reached the Supreme Court in the landmark Shreya Singhal case of 2015. In the Shreya Singhal case, the Supreme Court struck down Section 66A as unconstitutional. The Supreme Court declared that this provision is unconstitutional because of the discretion it's being blatantly misused to cripple freedom of speech and expression. Now, if police will determine what is offensive, right, then you can never share anything that's funny or even, let's say, a funny cartoon, right, which makes fun of political leaders. Think about stand-up comedians, right, who use political satire to send out political messages. So using satire, cartoons and comedy has been an integral part of free speech and expression to raise dissent against the government. So if this right is taken away by misusing the law, then that is blatantly unconstitutional. It goes against Article 90. It violates your freedom of speech and expression. So after several such violations, finally the Supreme Court struck down Section 66A as unconstitutional under the Shreya Singhal case. So using this Supreme Court ruling as a basis, the activists approached the court again, pointing out that the new IT rules, which provides for the establishment of a fact-check unit, would have a similar effect on free speech and expression. It will affect freedom of profession as well. Right to freedom of profession is a guaranteed fundamental right under Article 90. You can practice whatever profession you want. But if there is a fact-check unit established by the government, working for the government, dealing with fake news reports related to the government, then tomorrow, if let's say a cartoonist or a satire artist or a stand-up comedian, if they use satire and comedy to criticize the government, which is their fundamental right, what if the fact-check unit blames this as fake news and orders the social media firms, internet platforms and any other intermediary to take down that content? So this basically violates the right to profession as well of cartoonists, satirists and comedians. It violates freedom of speech and expression guaranteed under Article 19, goes against the right to free press, and also violates Article 14, right to equality. So based on this argument, right, the Bombay High Court has declared that these amendments that were done last year, which proposed the establishment of a fact-check unit, it has declared this to be unconstitutional. Supreme Court also is looking into this. It has as of now issued a stay order. Of course, the matter will reach the Supreme Court again. So let's see what the Supreme Court will eventually rule. But you need to understand something here. See, before the IT rules of 2021, before these rules were introduced, social media intermediaries, they enjoyed something called as a safe harbor. Under the IT Act, there was a safe harbor provision provided under Section 79 of the IT Act. Now, what do you mean by safe harbor provision? Section 79 basically gave immunity, legal immunity to the companies for the content hosted on their platforms. Because see, at the end of the day, any social media platform is an intermediary. YouTube or Telegram or WhatsApp, they are just intermediaries playing a role in between. Someone else is creating the content, someone else is posting it, someone else is circulating it and consuming it. So the idea was, if you blame the companies for the content hosted on their platform, posted by a third party, if you hold them legally liable, then no companies will operate. It will affect the business interests. right? This will cripple the operations of the company itself. So a safe harbor provision was given under section 79, meaning that these companies are not legally liable. If someone is posting a harmful message, offensive message or a fake message, that individual should be held liable and punished according to the law, not the company. This was the understanding. So safe harbor provision was given which granted immunity to the companies, meaning you can't hold the companies accountable, you can't hold them liable. But as these companies became non-cooperative with law enforcement, even in genuine cases, the government thought, let us remove the safe harbor. So basically, if these companies don't follow the new IT rules, if they don't show due diligence, if they don't show compliance with the new rules, right, if they don't follow them, then the government will lift the safe harbor, the immunity will be removed, which means the company officials can be arrested and prosecuted as well. See, I told you that under the new IT rules, social media companies have certain obligations. They should have an Indian physical presence, a registered office in India. They should appoint certain officials, right, who will be the point of contact for the government. And if government issues an order to take down some content, they have to comply within the given deadline. If users raise complaints, they have to look into it, address the grievances. If they don't follow these mandatory norms, then it means that the company is not showing due diligence. And then the government, the Ministry of Electronics and IT, can lift the safe harbor immunity under section 79, which means the company officials can now be arrested and prosecuted and they can be held accountable for the content on their platform. Is that clear? So, while this provision is necessary to hold the companies accountable, it also has an adverse effect. The problem is, it could lead to a chilling effect on freedom of speech and expression. In legal terminology, there is a doctrine, the doctrine of chilling effect. This is what the Supreme Court had pointed out in the Shreya Singhal case. The Bombay High Court yesterday in the current fact check unit case also has raised the same point, that if government itself is acting as a judge and prosecutor, if the government itself determines what is correct and incorrect, what is fact and what is fake news, and uses the legal tools available to punish the violators, then this could threaten everyone. Tomorrow, nobody will host a comedian because they are scared. If immunity is lifted, even the one who organized the event, who hosted the comedian, could be arrested and punished. So tomorrow, that host will never allow the comedian to perform, right? So basically, the fear of being targeted by the government, the fear of facing punishment under the law, it could lead to people becoming silent. They themselves will become silent. They'll tie a piece of cloth around their mouth, they'll become silent. Cartoonists will stop making cartoons because tomorrow, what if they are held accountable? Newspapers might they might stop publishing satirical cartoons. What if it is deemed as fake news tomorrow by a government agency and it orders to take it down, and if they don't, they'll be arrested and they'll be liable for prosecution. This is the doctrine of chilling effect, where a fear environment is created, where people themselves will start shutting their mouths out of fear of being targeted by the government. So this violates Article 14, right to equality, violates Article 19, right to free speech and expression and freedom of profession. So on these grounds, the Bombay High Court has delivered a landmark judgment, striking down the fact check unit and the amendment done last year to IT rules as unconstitutional. This is what you need to understand. Now let's see what kind of question can be given. The new IT rules have been controversial on the grounds that it has a chilling effect on freedom of speech and expression. Critically examine. So now I have discussed all the points with the right structure and flow as well. You just have to use those points, arrange that into an answer for this given question. So let's see how many of you can do this, and please post your answers in the comment section. Now let's look at another article. We have a very important editorial on page number 6. This editorial is related to the Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan. So over the last few days, Indus Water Treaty has been making a lot of news. So let's quickly understand what is the Indus Water Treaty, why the topic is in news, and what is the controversy surrounding it. So first, let's look at the background. See, Indus water basin is a shared water resource between India and Pakistan. When I say Indus water basin, the whole drainage basin includes 6 major rivers: the Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, Ravi, Beas and Satluj. Some of these rivers originate in Tibet, in China. Some of them originate in India, in Himachal Pradesh and the Jammu and Kashmir region. So they flow down from India into Pakistan and eventually they drain into Arabian Sea. This is the course of the Indus rivers. So India becomes the upper riparian. India is located in the upstream of these rivers, giving us greater control over the flow of these waters. And Pakistan is in the downstream. It's a lower riparian state, placing Pakistan at a disadvantage. Because if India decides to utilize the waters entirely for itself, or if India decides to block the flow of water into Pakistan or divert the water, then Pakistan will suffer. That's what happens with lower riparian states. Upper riparian states always have an upper hand. So Pakistan was always worried about how India will manage the Indus waters after independence. Given the history of our partition, the communal divisions, the political hostility, given that we had a boundary issue going on with a war that had been fought, both India and Pakistan were nervous and worried as to how the water sharing issue might affect the relationship. Pakistan in particular was more concerned because it believed that India might misuse the control over the waters to punish the country. So to address this concern and to provide for stability in the relationship, India-Pakistan negotiated and worked out Indus Water Treaty in 1960, which was arbitrated by the World Bank. World Bank acted as a mediator, as an arbiter, and even today it is responsible as a guarantor to enforce the treaty. So this was a major development in India-Pakistan relationship. After more than 1 decade of hostility and enmity and tensions, there was a big improvement in India-Pakistan relations when India agreed to sign the Indus Water Treaty. In fact, then US President Dwight Eisenhower, he praised this treaty as the only bright spot in a very depressing world, because the whole world had been divided by Cold War rivalries and tensions, right? There was still the hangover of the world wars and new conflicts had emerged in different parts of the world. So 1950s was indeed a very depressing world. So in this depressed and divided world, the lone bright spot was the signing of Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan. This was the statement, the observation of then American President Dwight Eisenhower. So you can understand how important the treaty was. So India was very generous when we negotiated and accepted the terms of the treaty. Because eventually, if you look at the terms of the treaty, India was giving away a lot of share to Pakistan. India was showing a bigger heart in the interest of building a better relationship with Pakistan. This was generosity and also statesman-like behavior from India under the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. So India agreed for the terms of the treaty. Now let's see what the treaty provided for. Under the Indus Water Treaty, the Indus Basin is divided into 2 regions. Essentially, the 6 rivers are bifurcated into western rivers and eastern rivers. It essentially draws a divide, a division line along the Indus Basin. So all the rivers located on the other side, on the western side, that is Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, these western rivers have been primarily allocated to Pakistan. Pakistan gets a greater share. See, you need not go into the technical details. You need not by heart the exact volume of water, the cusecs. That scientific data is not necessary. You just have to understand the broad allocation of waters, how it has been divided between India and Pakistan. These western rivers, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, they have been broadly allocated to Pakistan. Pakistan has greater control over them, meaning India's usage rights are largely restricted. India's usage rights on the western rivers is largely restricted. Now, some of you might think, why did India agree to this? If our usage rights was being curtailed, why did India agree to this? India agreed because this was the right thing to do. You should never politicize water. You should never play geopolitics with water, and you should never weaponize water. Because water is a bare necessity for human survival. It's about human rights. It's a very sensitive, emotive subject. So India was really generous, showed a big heart towards Pakistan, took a step towards a friendly relationship and agreed for a settlement which would favor both India and Pakistan. So allocating a greater share to Pakistan was in the right interest of the Pakistani people. See, our enmity, hostility was with Pakistani state, Pakistani armed forces, not with the common man in Pakistan. India would get nothing by hurting them, and rather, if India misuses the waters, right, this will instigate even more enmity at the ground level. The common people in Pakistan might start hating India if we weaponize water and politicize water. So a lot of strategic vision went into this. There was far-sightedness on India's part, right? We didn't play petty politics. Instead, we saw the long-term consequences. If we misuse the control on these waters, tomorrow people of Pakistan will stand up against India, rebel against India. That will help the Pakistani army and the state which is targeting India, right? So it was in our own interest to ensure that people of Pakistan get their rightful share. So we agreed that Pakistan will have greater share of the western rivers, greater control as well, with India's rights being restricted. But it doesn't mean we have no control. We do have some limited control. For example, we can use some percentage of the water for irrigation, which is essential, right? We can use some part of the water for drinking purposes as well, and we can even build run-of-the-mill projects, such as hydropower projects. Run-of-the-mill project is basically a dam which doesn't divert or hold the water permanently. See, when you build a dam where the water is held permanently or you're diverting the course of the river itself, that will affect the downstream area. Such projects are prohibited. We can't build such dams. But run-of-the-mill project is allowed, or run-of-the-river projects as they are called. These are primarily meant for hydropower generation. You store the water temporarily to create the hydropower potential and use it to turn the turbines, and then you allow the river to take its natural course without disrupting the flow of water and affecting the course. So such projects are allowed for India. Small percentage of these waters can be used for drinking, irrigation, etc. And we can build run-of-the-river projects for hydropower plants and then allow the waters to flow into Pakistan. So Pakistan gets a greater control. India's usage rights on western rivers has been restricted. Now coming to eastern rivers, Ravi, Beas and Satluj. As you all know, these rivers are the lifeline of northwest and north India. From Himachal Pradesh to Punjab, Haryana, in the entire agrarian belt, right, farmers are heavily dependent on these rivers. These waters are critical for irrigation in the agrarian belt of Punjab and Haryana. It is crucial for drinking water and many other purposes. So northwest India is heavily dependent on these rivers, right? So eastern rivers have been largely allocated to India. India gets a greater share of control on eastern rivers. Here we can use the waters as we want to meet our needs for irrigation, drinking, industrial usage, power generation, even navigation and maintaining the environmental flow, ecological flow. Once we fulfill our usage and our demands are met, then we will allow the rest to flow into Pakistan. To maintain the ecological flow, the remaining water will be allowed to flow into Pakistan, which Pakistan can utilize. So a small share of eastern rivers is given to Pakistan, with India getting a larger share. So overall, if you look at the water distribution between India and Pakistan, Pakistan has an advantage. Pakistan gets a slightly higher share than India, and India agreed to it purely out of goodwill, as a goodwill gesture, keeping in mind the long-term interests of India, because we did have a need for friendly relations with our neighboring countries. So this is the story about Indus Water Treaty. But however, Pakistan has been repeatedly creating problems for India with regard to Indus Water Treaty. See, India remains committed to the Indus Water Treaty. According to the treaty, there is a permanent Indus Commission, also called Indus Water Commission, which has to be set up. So both sides, their respective water resources ministries, will set up this commission. The water secretary will act as the water commissioner of the Indus Water Treaty, and both sides will meet every year. There is an annual meeting of the Indus Water Commissioners, who are part of the permanent Indus Commission, and there is a review of the treaty done every 5 years. Now, India has rigorously held up its obligation and commitment. We have never abused our control over these rivers. We have respected the treaty, allowed Pakistan to enjoy the western rivers while remaining within the limits of the treaty as far as eastern rivers are concerned. Not even once has India broken the provisions of the treaty, and every year we have held the annual meeting of the Indus Water Commissioners. We have been participating in the periodic reviews as well. Now remember, this was even when Pakistan was waging wars against India. This was even when Pakistan was sponsoring terrorism against India. Despite that, India took a conscious decision, subsequent governments, they took a conscious call to not weaponize water, to not violate the obligation. Because now this was part of our international commitment. If India were to violate the terms or break the treaty, right, then global community wouldn't respect India. They would see India as a rule breaker, a country which violates the rules-based order. So we had a global commitment to protect our global image and standing. Plus, we never wanted to weaponize water or punish the people of Pakistan for the mistakes of Pakistani deep state and the Pakistani army and the government. So India always drew a distinction between water and other issues we had with Pakistan. But Pakistan has repeatedly provocated India. See, when we took up some projects like Baglihar Dam project, you might have heard about the Baglihar Dam project, essentially a hydropower project. It was supposed to be a run-of-the-river project, which is allowed under the Indus Water Treaty. Right? It was coming up on one of the western rivers, which is allocated to Pakistan. But as I told you, India has limited rights. We can build run-of-the-river projects for hydropower generation. We do have limited usage rights as well. Within the terms of the treaty, India was taking up the Baglihar Dam project. But Pakistan deliberately created roadblocks by taking the issue to the International Court of Justice and the Permanent Court of Arbitration. Pakistan would take the legal route against India, accusing India of violating the treaty. But eventually, thanks to the treaty, this issue was settled in India's favor. The PCA, Permanent Court of Arbitration, located at The Hague in Netherlands, ruled in favor of India that India was not violating the treaty, allowing the project to continue. Similarly, Pakistan raised unnecessary issues with India over the Neelam project. This was a Pakistani project. Pakistan alleged that India was interfering with the project by manipulating the flow of the water. But India rejected these allegations. Again, Pakistan dragged India to litigation. And here as well, the treaty helped us in settling the dispute. Now, Pakistan has continued this behavior. It has objected to the Kishan Ganga project and even the Ratle hydropower project. These are major hydro projects pursued by India in Jammu and Kashmir. It will bring electricity, it will solve the developmental and economic problems of J&K. It's essential for development in the region. Pakistan deliberately misuses the treaty to delay these projects of India, as Pakistan wants to keep Kashmir destabilized. Right? It tries to target these developmental initiatives of India by misusing the treaty, by filing unnecessary cases, even when India follows the terms of the treaty. We have a strict commitment ourselves. Right? We ourselves have taken a commitment. Because one, we know that if we quit, our global image could be affected. Plus, we never wanted to weaponize water. But in the recent years, our thinking has started changing, especially after the Uri attacks of 2016 and the Pulwama attacks of 2019. These were turning points. These attacks carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed, sponsored by the Pakistani deep state, by the Pakistani army and its intelligence agency, the ISI. This was like the final nail in the coffin for India. After these repeated attacks, a debate started in India within the media, within the government as well, amongst strategic experts, that should India use Indus Water Treaty to punish Pakistan? Because if India wants, we can. If India quits the treaty, right, it will put Pakistan on the back foot. Pakistan will be the one to suffer if India uses the waters as it wants. So there were suggestions from many quarters that India should reconsider the treaty. Maybe we should even quit the treaty when Pakistan carries out an attack against India. But the Modi government decided not to quit. Again, given the long-term consequences, right, our global image would take a hit because we would be breaking our international commitment. And also, this could be misused in Pakistan again. See, there are terrorist leaders in Pakistan like Hafiz Saeed, Masood Azhar and others. who have conducted rallies accusing India of water terrorism. Whenever there are floods in the Indus basin or droughts in Pakistan, these terrorist leaders blame India without any reason, without any evidence. Right? They tell the people of Pakistan that, look, India is misusing water to punish the people. This enables them to radicalize the people and get more support for terrorism against India. So given this reality, the practical reality, India knows very well to play this safely and not allow the ISI or the terrorist groups to exploit this issue. So we never wanted to weaponize the treaty or the issue of water, but Pakistan's repeated behavior has forced a rethink on India's part. The Modi government has had a rethink. So over the last few months, there is something which is happening. India has pushed for a renegotiation. See, Modi government did not quit despite the pressure building up after these attacks. There was a lot of demand from many circles, even within the ruling party. Right? There were several recommendations that we should use the treaty to punish Pakistan and quit the treaty. But still the Modi government resisted the temptation, and as subsequent governments have established a policy, right, we remained committed to the treaty. Even now we are committed to the treaty. But one change that we are noticing is that the Modi government has issued a notice to Pakistan to renegotiate the treaty. And Pakistan is not responding. Pakistan is not replying back. It's not agreeing for a renegotiation. So recently what India did was, we cancelled the annual meeting of the Indus water commissioners. See, I told you that even during wars, tensions, India, Pakistan have never cancelled the annual meeting of the Indus water commissioners. We have kept this engagement continuing. But recently, the Modi government pulled out from the annual meeting of Indus water commissioners as Pakistan was not responding to India's request to renegotiate the terms of the treaty. See, here India has a valid point. Climate change and global warming is having a deadly impact on weather. We are witnessing extreme weather events. So obviously Indus basin will be affected. There could be extreme rainfall leading to floods, which may not be under India's control. There could be a lack of rainfall during certain seasons, leading to droughts. So there is a genuine concern which India has been expressing that, look, climate change is indeed a global menace. It could affect all the water systems and the weather patterns, which could affect the water sharing as well between India and Pakistan. So India is pushing for a renegotiation. This could also be a pressure tactic by India to bring pressure on Pakistan. It's like hitting two birds with one stone. We genuinely want to discuss the impact of climate change on water sharing of Indus, plus use this as a pressure tactic on Pakistan. Because PM Modi had once stated after the Uri attacks that blood and water cannot flow together. If Pakistan is bleeding Indians through terror attacks, how can Pakistan expect us to release water? This was a statement made by Prime Minister Modi. Back then, even Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh had made a similar statement. Not with regard to Indus Water Treaty, but with regard to talks with Pakistan. They had said terror and talks cannot go hand in hand. When Pakistan is carrying out terrorism against us, we can't talk to Pakistan. So PM Modi relied on the same position and he said blood and water cannot flow together. Which means that within the government there has been a rethink that should we use Indus Water Treaty to at least bring pressure on Pakistan. If not quit, if not break our commitment, at least use it as a pressure tactic. And also push Pakistan to renegotiate so that the terms can favor India and consider the impact of climate change and global warming. But Pakistan is not agreeing to it. It has not even responded even once to the request. We have been raising this demand from more than 1 year. That is why India decided this time that we are not going to participate in the annual meeting of Indus water commissioners. So this is the issue. So editorial is urging India to tread carefully. See, India can leverage the treaty to pressurize Pakistan. It could be a great diplomatic tactic. It's part of our course of diplomacy. But however, we should ensure that it is not perceived as weaponization of water. That could affect India's image. It could actually affect the people of Pakistan. That could benefit the terrorist groups and the ISI to create more radicalism against India as well. Also, this is probably the only arrangement we have which is part of our friendly relations. right? The focus should be on building a basic decent relationship with our neighbor. So the editorial is urging caution, asking the government to tread cautiously. So take up a question based on this. Examine India's demand to renegotiate the Indus Water Treaty. That is your straightforward question. So use the points that we have discussed. Bring in the background as well, some basic introduction to Indus Water Treaty, and why India is considering a renegotiation. What has been India's traditional position, and why are we looking at a renegotiation, right? That is what you need to discuss. Now coming to the next article, on page 8, we have an article related to the collegium system of appointment of judges. It's a small article. Let's take a quick look. Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud has asked the government to explain why there has been an inordinate delay in accepting the names recommended by the collegium for appointing judges to High Court and Supreme Court. There have been several names which have been kept pending by the government. Appointments have not been carried out. There are vacancies which are unfilled in the Supreme Court and also in the High Courts. And even after the collegium had reiterated the names, the government has not moved, the government has not recommended the names to the president to appoint these judges. There has been a delay of several months. In some cases, there has been a delay of few years as well, right? So this is affecting the functioning of the judiciary. It raises questions about independence of the judiciary, how executive can interfere with the judiciary and its appointment. That is why the Chief Justice of India has asked the government to explain why there is an inordinate delay in appointing judges even after collegium has reiterated their names. That is the issue being brought up here. So let's take a quick look at the appointment of judges in India, the issue of collegium system, the controversy around it. If you look at the Indian Constitution, we have two articles that deal with appointment of judges to the higher judiciary. Article 124, Article 217. So Supreme Court judges are appointed by the President of India, but after consultation with judges of such High Courts and Supreme Court. This is what the Constitution says. The Chief Justice will be consulted by the President in all appointments except for his or her own, and in other cases for appointing the Chief Justice of India, right, the President will consult with the senior judges of the Supreme Court. 217 deals with High Court appointments. Here as well, High Court judges are appointed by the President, but after consulting the Chief Justice of India and the Governor of the concerned state and Chief Justice of the concerned High Court when it comes to appointing judges to the High Court. Clear? This is what the Constitution says, but the exact process is not defined. It only says President should consult. The President should consult the Chief Justice of India, should consult the senior judges, right? And President provides for the appointment. But the exact process and what does consultation mean? This has not been defined. Is consultation binding? Let's say Chief Justice of India says that you have to appoint these judges. Is it binding on the President? That is not clear in the Constitution. Now, of course, this is not a discretionary power of the President. When it says President, essentially the decision is left to the Council of Ministers, which is basically the government, right? Because President is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, again according to the Constitution of India. So this is not a discretionary power of the President. The President is acting on behalf of the Council of Ministers, acting on their aid and advice. So the President will consult with the Chief Justice of India and the senior judges, decide upon the appointment. So exact process is not defined, and the meaning of consultation is not clearly provided in the Constitution. So for several years after independence, the government had an upper hand in appointing judges. Consultation meant only consultation. President would consult with judges. Usually they would arrive at some consensus, or the government would go ahead with those judges who would fit the bill, who would seem to be more favorable towards the government. So this had raised questions about the very integrity of the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary. But through the three judges case, the Supreme Court evolved a system of appointment called the collegium. See, this system of appointment, which is currently followed since 1993, it is not mentioned in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't mention anything about the collegium. It's not rooted in the Constitution. So you can see this as extra constitutional, right? So in the collegium system, which is currently in place, there is a Supreme Court collegium consisting of the 5 top judges of the Supreme Court. It includes the Chief Justice of India, obviously, and 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court. So they will recommend the names to the President, essentially to the government, for appointing judges to Supreme Court and High Court, including Chief Justices of High Courts and their transfers. So both appointment and transfer of judges in the higher judiciary is handled by the Supreme Court Collegium headed by the Chief Justice of India with 4 senior most judges. Similarly, there is a High Court Collegium at the High Court level, consisting of the Chief Justice of that concerned High Court and 2 senior most judges from the High Court. So while considering appointment to High Courts, Supreme Court Collegium obviously will consult with High Court Collegium as well. So eventually names are recommended to the President, and the President usually accepts the names and essentially provides for the appointment of these judges. But however, if the President has an issue with the recommended names, essentially if the government has a problem with the track record or the merit or the integrity of the judges who are being recommended, the government through the President can send back the names, right? They can basically ask the collegium to reconsider. The government can send back the recommended names asking the collegium to reconsider. But if the collegium reiterates, if the collegium says, no, you have to go ahead with these names and appoint them, then according to the second judge's case that introduced the collegium system, it becomes mandatory, binding in a way on the government. But government doesn't think so. The government says this is a discretion. The government has a discretion, even if collegium has reiterated. The thing is, there is no deadline, right? In the second judge's case, the Supreme Court said it is binding. If the collegium reiterates the same names, the President is bound to appoint them. But there is no deadline, no time period given. Basically, government can sit on the decision, thus delaying appointments. So this has become a tactic. Given the friction that exists between the government and the judiciary quite often, when government doesn't like the names of the recommended judges, what the government does is that, see, it knows that according to second judge's case, the reiterated names are binding. The government should go ahead recommend the President to appoint them. But what if the government sits on the decision, doesn't take any decision at all, simply keeps delaying the decision? Because there is nothing mentioned about this. There is no law, there is no constitutional provision. Even if Supreme Court Collegium has reiterated the names, the government can take its own sweet time, several months, maybe years, till the time the judge retires from service. So this has become a time delaying tactic, a time buying tactic by the government to delay the appointment of certain judges. So this raises questions again about the independence of the judiciary. To what extent should executive have control over appointments? Let's see how this collegium system evolved. It evolved through what is called as the 3 judges cases, the first judge case of 1981. In this case, the Supreme Court interpreted that the term consultation mentioned under Article 124(2)(17) basically means that it's only an exchange of views, meaning President will consult with the Chief Justice of India. As mentioned, consultation will be done, exchange of views will happen, but it's not binding on the President. Whatever Chief Justice of India recommends, right, as per the constitutional provision, it's not binding. This was the interpretation of the court in the first judge's case, meaning the government got an upper hand. The government retained its upper hand in the appointment of judges. So President will consult as per the constitution, but consultation means exchange of views. Chief Justice might recommend some names, but government can reject that through the President, and President can appoint any judge as recommended by the Council of Ministers. That's what it basically meant. But this was reversed in the second judge's case of 1993. It was a landmark judgment. The Supreme Court said that, look, consultation means concurrence. In the Constitution, under Article 124(2)(17), the word consultation means concurrence, meaning the President has to concur with the Chief Justice of India. Essentially, the recommendations of the Chief Justice basically becomes binding here. And the court went ahead to create the collegium to provide this consultation. Initially, it was just the Chief Justice and 2 senior most judges. Later, 2 more judges were added to make it a 5-member collegium. So Chief Justice of India heads the Supreme Court Collegium with 4 senior most judges, and consultation has been interpreted as concurrence, which means the names recommended by the collegium should generally be considered for appointment by the government and recommended to the President. The government, however, can raise an objection it can send the names back if it's not comfortable with the names, right? Because government also takes a look at the merit of the judge, their integrity, it runs a background check as well, right? So government does have a choice to send the names back. But if the collegium reiterates, then essentially in second judge's case, it was ruled that as a convention, government should appoint the reiterated names. The president should appoint the reiterated names as a convention, making it almost binding on the government. But now the government found a way around it. Since there is no deadline, no prescribed time period to take the decision, the government sits on the recommendation, delays it for months and years till those judges retire from service. So this raises questions from the judiciary that why are you delaying the appointments? Are you undermining the collegium system? In the third judge's case, the plurality of the collegium was upheld. That is when the collegium was expanded to bring 4 senior most judges, right? So this tussle has been going on from a long time between the government and the judiciary regarding appointment of judges. So there is criticism against collegium as well because it lacks transparency. Within the collegium, there is no transparency, no accountability. It's like judges appointing themselves, right? So there is no transparency at all. Whatever the collegium decides, in a way it has been made binding on the government, which is not fair, which is not transparent, which is not accountable. You can't have such a system in a democracy as well. Yes, judiciary has to be independent, free from executive control, but doesn't mean the judiciary can do what it wants. If you look at other countries, they have proper systems, transparent models of appointment of judges. But in India, we don't have that. This is where Supreme Court faces a lot of criticism. Higher judiciary, the collegium system is heavily criticized. Because what if the collegium is favoring someone, even if they don't have the merit? What if they are recommending the wrong people to these senior positions? Right? There should be more checks and balances and more accountability, more transparency in the process. So to address this issue, the Modi government introduced a constitutional amendment to establish the National Judicial Appointments Commission in 2014, or NJAC. NJAC was established by the government, National Judicial Appointments Commission, which provides representation for judiciary, government and civil society as well. So this arrangement was created for appointing judges, but the Supreme Court struck down NJAC as unconstitutional. The Supreme Court ruled that government is meddling with the appointment of judges, threatening the independence of the judiciary, which is against the basic structure of the constitution, and it struck down NJAC as unconstitutional, thus restoring the collegium system back. So since then, the collegium system of appointments is back. But what Modi government has been doing, it has been delaying certain appointments, sitting on certain decisions, even after collegium has reiterated the names, leading to friction, constant friction between the collegium, that is the higher judiciary, and the government. So that is the issue that you need to understand. So right now the Chief Justice has asked for answers from the government, an explanation on record as to why the government has not appointed these judges, why vacancies are left behind even after collegium has reiterated the names. So this is a developing story. Let's continue to track this. Now coming to the prelim section, let's take a quick look. But before that, if you wish, you can join my Telegram channel, as I'll be sharing a lot of current affairs updates as well. Now let's look at this image on page number 1 and a related article on page number 4. The Hindu carries this image that depicts a massive blockade of trucks. Hundreds and hundreds of trucks are blocked along the West Bengal-Jharkhand border. This has triggered a major issue. So let's understand what's happening here on the borders of West Bengal and Jharkhand. The West Bengal state government, under the Trinamool Congress, under Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, has decided to shut the borders for trucks entering from Jharkhand. That is why this huge pileup has been reported, triggering a massive crisis. Now, why West Bengal has taken this decision? It's because West Bengal is facing severe floods because of the Damodar river and the manner in which the dams on the Damodar are being operated by the Damodar Valley Corporation. The central government has greater control on the functioning of Damodar Valley Corporation, which manages all the dam projects and other projects on the Damodar river. So this operation is leading to massive flooding in West Bengal, turning into a major disaster affecting the people, and the infrastructure and the environment. So West Bengal has urged the centre and the Damodar Valley Corporation to understand the flood situation in West Bengal, but it has not received a positive response. So West Bengal government has retaliated by blocking the border roads with Jharkhand from where the river originates, and it has shut off the movement of trucks leading to this blockade. So let's quickly understand what is the Damodar river, why is it important? You can get a prelims question here. The Damodar is a lifeline for Jharkhand and West Bengal. It originates in the Kamarpat Hill range in the Chota Nagpur plateau of Jharkhand. And I'm sure all of you know that Chota Nagpur plateau is a mineral rich region. It's blessed with minerals. Multiple mines and industries are located along the course of the Damodar. You can see in the map, it originates in the Chota Nagpur region at the Kamarpat Hill range and flows down into West Bengal before joining the Hooghly, which then drains into Bay of Bengal. This is the course of the river. Damodar is also called Sorrow of Bengal. You might have studied this since your school days, because it causes massive flooding in West Bengal, brings enormous suffering to the people of West Bengal. That's why it's often called Sorrow of Bengal. So to manage the flood waters and to provide for efficient water management, several projects were taken up. Dam and power projects were taken up, which is managed by the Damodar Valley Corporation. So please note down the tributaries of Damodar as well. UPSC tends to ask prelims questions based on tributaries. So please make a note. I have highlighted all the tributaries here. Coming to Damodar Valley Corporation, it was established in 1948 as a statutory body under the control of Ministry of Power. It's based out of Kolkata, but controlled by the central government to manage the dams and hydro projects and the power projects located on the Damodar and its tributaries. So the way in which these projects are handled, the way in which water is released, will determine the flood situation in Bengal during the rainy season. And almost every year, the Damodar floods, and especially this time, the West Bengal government has alleged that the centre and the wrong decisions of Damodar Valley Corporation has led to a devastating flood situation in the state. That is why West Bengal has retaliated against Jharkhand from where the river originates and blocked the border roads. Coming to the last topic for today, on page number 4, we have an article related to the Kutch region in Gujarat. As you know, Kutch has a very unique topography. The Kutch region is an arid region known for its salt plains, salt production, and also it's known for its rich mangrove forests, as this is largely a marshy area, essentially a wetland. So there is a very unique ecosystem that exists in the Kutch region, right? There are backwaters and estuaries, part of the Indus basin itself, as it drains into Arabian Sea. You have a marshy area that gets created, a wetland, where mangroves thrive, and the nearby regions are desert arid areas where salt plains are present. Salt manufacturing, salt production is very high as well. So in this Kutch region, a deadly disease has killed many people. It's a mysterious disease. Researchers have still not been able to figure out which disease exactly is it. Several people have lost their lives, especially from certain communities. This has triggered panic within the local community. So that is the news. But for us, what is important is that the article mentions a community, the Muslim Jat community. The Muslim Jat community found in the Kutch region is a nomadic community. So within the Muslim Jat community, there are different groups. You have the Fakirani Jats, you have the Fakirani Jats, Hajiani Jats, Daneta Jats and Garasia Jats. It's believed that they migrated from Iran several decades ago and settled in parts of Pakistan and India. Basically, they are believed to be nomadic groups that migrated from Iran and settled in the Sindh region of today's Pakistan and the Kutch region of today's Gujarat in India. This is where you find the Muslim Jat community, where there are different subsects. The Fakirani Jats in particular are known for their nomadic living. right? They basically domesticate a very unique animal of this region called the Karai camel. Now, I am highlighting this because UPSC has already asked a prelims question in 2016 on the Karai camel. The Karai camel is very unique. It can swim in the marshy wetland of Kutch region. It can swim up to several kilometers. So, have you ever seen a camel swim? Right? If you haven't, you should go to Kutch. So, this practice is seen in the nearby region as well, where the Muslim Jat community, especially the Fakirani Jats who are nomadic, they have domesticated the Karai camels, which can wade through waters, swim through the wetlands, the marshy areas, and they mainly eat the mangroves. They rely on mangroves for sustenance. Is that clear? That is what makes the Karai camels very unique, and they are a threatened species. So, the camel produces milk, which has been the primary source of income for the Fakirani Jat community. Now, this disease which has broken out, this mysterious disease which is killing a lot of people in the Kutch region, it has affected the Muslim Jat community, especially the Fakirani Jats. That is what the article is mentioning. So, if you are aware of these basic points, you should be able to tackle any question. Now, look at this question that UPSC has already asked in 2016 prelims. Take this up as a practice question. Read the statements. What is unique about the Karai camel, a breed found in India? It's capable of swimming up to 3 kilometers in sea water. It survives by grazing on mangroves. It lives in the wild and cannot be domesticated. So, look at the options. Let me know the correct answer in the comment section below. So, this completes my detailed analysis of today's The Hindu, and I hope you guys have liked the session, understood everything. And if you did benefit, do support us with your comments, your likes. That would mean the world to us. It will keep us motivated to do better for you. And if you are benefiting from our channel, do subscribe to our channel as well. So, that is it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Till then, take care. Have a good day.